Dokun, hello. Nice to see you again, bud. What's up?
Oh, doing well. Good to see you as well, Lauren.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we were just chatting a little bit before I hit record, and you gave me a couple of pieces of information that I held on because I wanted to know more. So we'll get to the fact that you are a consultant. You do a
Mhm.
lot of kind of sales process and revenue generation work. You're ex-BCG, great. You're a college football player. Where'd you play?
So I went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and it was an amazing experience. Um,
What was your position?
I was running back.
You're running back at
Yeah,
UNC.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And so now you said you're still a bit of an athlete. You live
Mhm.
in Orange County, you go to the beach. Tell me about like what is the outdoor situation that keeps you happy out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's very convenient to be only 20 minutes from the beach. I go probably once or twice a week. I love hiking as well, so that's something I do pretty often. And the weather, I mean, it's November here. I was outside earlier in my t-shirt. I mean, it's unbelievable weather. So really enjoy the experience out here.
Yeah. So when you are working, so you're an independent consultant. When you are working, how much balance are you able to find to do those things?
It's not always easy, but it doesn't always have to be a long thing. You can go for a walk, or you can put kind of things in the middle of your day to kind of, make sure you're keeping your balance. So yeah, there's always your evenings as well. So I find the time, but definitely focus on work as well. So,
Yeah. So you and I have a couple of things in common. Not
mhm.
UNC football, obviously. Although my husband will be psyched to hear I talk to you today. We both have spent a lot of our lives in Chicago and in Houston.
Ah,
So tell me about, so I lived in Chicago when I was like 16, 15 until I graduated high school, but my parents were there for about 25 years. Where did you grow up? Like, what was that like? So you're from, I should say, you told me you were born in Nigeria, but then
yes.
your parents had a crazy idea to be cold. So let's,
Yeah. It was a huge adjustment. We moved when I was 7, to actually Chicago suburbs, because there's a difference between Chicago and Chicago suburbs. So I grew up in Glen Ellen and Addison. Those were like the two suburbs I grew up in. I was there till probably 16 years old, and then we moved to North Carolina, and that's where I ended up going to college and all that. But I really enjoyed Chicago. Still feels like home. I mean, even when I go back now, I still have family there. But definitely don't miss the weather for sure. Uh, so,
no joke. I mean, sometimes I wish that there was like a white Christmas, but then I went back last year for a day. I flew in and out in February in one day. And I remembered as I was sitting on the tarmac, de-icing the plane, getting delayed from snow. I was like, this is why. This is why we don't live there anymore. It's too hard to have our jobs and try and commute out of Chicago. Um, cool. You said you're also a jujitsu. You got into jujitsu?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been doing it roughly 3 years, and it's almost like a physical chess match.
Huh. Okay.
And somebody who I think is a thinker will really be drawn to it. And obviously, I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life, so just the mix of like the mental side and the physical side, and just keeping me in shape. I mean, that's why it's almost addicting. Because as a bigger person, it's not always about how big you are. A smaller person can use leverage and intellect to kind of defeat a bigger person. So that's one thing that's always intrigued me about it. So
Cool.
yeah.
Um, okay, so I'm assuming we have not met in person, but I'm assuming
uh,
you are a bigger person. Uh,
Good size. A good size.
so you're on the mat and you come up to
Yeah,
an opponent who
yeah,
is clearly not of your stature. Are you
yeah.
worried? What are you doing? Like, how are you mentally prepping for that?
In the gym, it's kind of like a family atmosphere. You're practicing with the same people, so you really get to know them. No one's really going to try to hurt you or anything like that. but you are taking it seriously when you are like sparring, you know, and you're trying to stay as calm as possible. That's the thing about it. And I think it translates over into real life because you will be in a very difficult situation. Maybe someone's on your back or you're trying to get out of a tough spot. But if you panic, you will lose your technique, you'll lose all your momentum. So you really have, it's really a thinking game. And you have to remind yourself of that, even when you're in the worst situations. So.
Yeah. How do you take that into your work?
Well, I think it's something that I've always had since I was a kid because I've always played sports and you have that kind of outlet. So I think having that kind of extreme kind of intensity when I'm at work, things tend to come at me a lot slower. You know, they're not as bad, whatever it is, whatever obstacle I'm facing. I mean, this morning I woke up I was working out at 5:30 this morning. So whatever I do today, is not going to be as difficult as what I just finished, you know, earlier this morning. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, who also, she ran the Boston Marathon while her
Mhm.
son was ill. She was like a top 30% finisher, and she adopted, like, she was not an athlete growing up. And I asked
Mhm.
her, like, well, what, and she's done Ironman triathlons. So I was like, well, what, like, why do you do this? And you know what? Her
Mhm.
answer was the exact same as yours. She said, because I know if I do it, that is the hardest thing I've done today, and everything else is easier. So it's a winner's
Absolutely.
mentality. Yeah. Well, great.
Absolutely.
Cool. I want to ask you one kind of semi-professional question,
All
if
right.
I could.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have this current obsession with different business models. So kind of like how you're talking about this mental chess game, I've started unraveling how people are either making money or they are adopting their cost structure or doing things that are allowing their businesses to be disruptive in whatever market they're operating in.
Yeah.
I'll give you a second, but are there any type of businesses right now that you're looking at where you're like, God, that's smart, or geez, I really admire what those people are doing? Like, what's interesting to you right now in the market?
You know, I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but I've always been intrigued and dabbling in things. I mean, I have real estate investments, for example. I'm like an Airbnb. I mean, I learn a lot, even though I don't want to be like an Airbnb entrepreneur, I learn a lot from just managing it. The people you interact with, the different walks of life, you know. So some of those lessons I think transfer over, you know, when you're doing consulting or you're doing any other side of business. So I'm always talking to friends who have different businesses, and I feel like there's always something you can learn from, you know, each of their industries. A lot of my MBA friends or some of my jujitsu friends, a lot of them are business owners.
Hmm.
So you know, I'm always willing to learn, but I don't know if I have a good answer for like a
Give me an
maybe a
example. Okay,
mm,
so I like this too. Like, we also have a couple of Airbnbs. I love small businesses because I
yeah,
think, like, you really are so close to the operation. You figure out what works, and then if you take that back to $1 billion business, like, the fundamentals are the same, you know?
yes,
It just,
yeah,
in some ways, it's just so much easier when you have less, that you must focus on those fundamentals and the model in order to be successful. Um, what are there any examples from your friends in the gym that you're taking into your work?
yeah. One of my good friends, we actually started the same time. He went to USC for his MBA, and I went to UCLA. So we kind of were, you know, I guess we're the rivals, but we started the same time. And we've been going to class. We keep each other accountable. And he owns a like all-state insurance business. So he has like his own office, and he's been in insurance since he was like 22. You know, he's probably in his 40s, and it's just fascinating me because I went a different path. You know, I went maybe the MBA route, I worked in corporate, and I learned a lot from him about how he motivates his salespeople because everyone's kind of like an independent insurance agent. And he does very, very well. I mean, he's in the Manhattan Beach area. So it's like, you know, he has a lot of good clientele. And what I learned more from him just interacting is his ability to develop and build relationships. He talks to everyone we'll be in class. Everyone's going by saying hi to him. He knows everybody, you know, so he's in the relationship business. And I think that's something, as someone who had a background in sales, I'm always kind of drawn to, and what he does and his charisma and how he kind of keeps these relationships going, you know, and I
Yeah.
think that's very important in our business as well. So
Yeah, I agree. I had it's kind of my weakness, to be perfectly honest, which maybe doesn't seem like it would be. I had not a mentor, but another colleague in my BCG days who told me, work the people as hard as the problem. And I remember that every single day, because at the end of the day, like, and this is how I think about my job. Like, my job is to get my clients promoted. They may say like it's to do X, Y, Z, but it's not. Like, that's my kind of North Star metric. And in order to do that, we have to work the people as hard as the problem. So that's great advice.
interesting.
Well, thank you, Dokun. It was really wonderful to spend a little time with you and share you a little bit more about you with our community, and we will talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren.